the job market. I do have a guest with me in studio, very accomplished, and she'll tell us all of her titles, but her name is Dorcas Wainaina. She's a certified HR management professional, 13 years of experience, also a council member of IHRM. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I know you have many other titles that couldn't fit on my tablet. Maybe you can just give us just a brief background on yourself.
Thank you so much, and I'm grateful that I'm here this morning. I have actually over 15 years of HR experience.
Over 15, okay.
Both locally and internationally. Indeed, my last employment, I was overseeing HR operations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And then I ended employment and got in self-employment after that. And of course, I'm also a certified HR management professional. This is a certification from the US, and I'm also a chartered HR analyst.
Wow.
I'm a fellow of the American Academy, and I run HR programs for them in Africa.
Okay.
And I'm a member now of the Council of Institute of Human Resource Management, and we are tasked with implementing the HR Act in this country.
Right.
I also chair the registration committee, and this committee is a statutory committee mandated to ensure that we vet our HR professionals and ensure that they have the body of knowledge, they have the experience they require to really run and oversee the workforce in the workplace. I think briefly that is really who I am.
Briefly.
Yeah.
No, that's very accomplished, of course, and I'm glad that you could make time for us this morning. So as I said, we're talking about the effects of the ongoing changes in the education system and what that means for the job market in Kenya. We are witnessing a change from the old guard in the way things are done in the education system. So maybe your thoughts on what's going on there first.
It is very interesting but not necessarily surprising that things turned out the way they did after the 2016 results, both of KCSE particularly, because then that prepares the youth into college so that then they are ready for the workplace thereafter. Because some of these things we have experienced them in the workplace, being a HR professional who recruits the workforce, and I interview them into the workplace. I've experienced some of this. Can you imagine? You're in an interview and you're asking a question, and the candidate comes in and asks, Ama sawa sawa. You know, this lack of professionalism in the way we look at somebody coming into the workplace, and the etiquette perhaps and the professionalism expected of them, and sometimes it's the responses that they come with into the workplace. It shows you that when they are so laissez-faire in their way of handling themselves, something has gone amiss. Not to say that everybody should be stuck up in suit and a tie, but we are saying that there's a level of formality that of course you cannot lose when you're coming to the workplace. That's number one. Number two, there are certain basic skills you expect of somebody who has gone through a university. And when you miss that, like simply submitting a simple report on a simple matter, and it comes to you and you review it, all of it is read because you have reviewed it and it's all of it read, then there's a question to answer. Bad grammar mixed with sheng, etc. And you're wondering what went wrong, where and how, because they cannot be players in an international setup with that kind of corrupted language as a case in point. But there's much more than really just that it's the language. There's much more than that. The analytical skills, their way of thinking. So that we are now trying to look for ways of helping the workforce to think analytically when they're looking at situations. Somebody looks at an issue on the surface level and you're saying, but what about this or that? And saying, oh, I didn't think about it that way.
So whose responsibility? Is it solely the education system, responsibility to equip these young people who are going into job interviews and, tarmacking, as they say, to be able to present themselves, like you're saying, in a professional manner, proper grammar, analytical skills? I mean, isn't it partly also their own responsibility outside of the education system?
The education system plays its part in imparting the education. So of course then the teachers are prepared to teach the students in a certain way, this curriculum, isn't it? But then you find the students are going out of the way to do the thing their own way, and they're using it in a manner not accepted, but they make it become as if it's the norm. Secondly, there is the society at large. We are here, the professionals like me, we're in HR. What have we done to mentor this young workforce and prepare them for the workplace, because we can't sit back. They're coming for an interview, and Dorcas is complaining that they are not coming to an interview in the way I expect. But we should also think of ways to set up mentorship programs to prepare them into the workplace. What I'm saying is that we are not necessarily going to change everything in one go, saying, okay, you're not going to be tweeting, you're not going to be in Instagram, you're not going to use Sheng. They will use Sheng, but we are saying use it within a context. When you are coming to this context, which is a workplace, use it in such a manner. So education system has its part to play. We professionals have a part to play. Society at large has a part to play. I'll give you an example. Because of my practice, I see a lot of young people struggling to get just an opportunity to intern, to get an attachment, so that they can learn what it means to work in an office setup. And guess what? We say, oh, you know, we don't take interns here. Who will take them? But when they come for an interview, we ask, do you have work experience? They say, no. Oh, well, we can't hire you because you don't have work experience. Where are they going to get it? And that's where everybody has failed. But we keep blaming the system. Education system is not going to give them experience. Those of us in workplaces must open the doors. Private sector must open the doors to accept these younger people and prepare them into the workplace by giving them the opportunity to learn what it means to work in a workplace setup. And I can give an example. In Nigeria, because I worked in that country for several years, in Nigeria it's mandatory. If you are below the years 30, you must intern in a workplace. And so employers are open to that. They know it must happen. They must give them the opportunity. Is the culture there? That's how we will get people with experience to come and work in the workplace. In our country, it is not the case. Why is it that we cannot actually make this a mandatory process to prepare the youth into the workplace? We can't keep talking about half-baked graduates. We will bake them fully. The education system doesn't bake them fully. Somebody else in that chain, once you have put it in the oven to bake, somebody else has to keep checking if it's fully baked. Another one will have to get it out and say, now it is fully cooked. Now let me put it to cool down. So everybody has a role to play.
So with the streamlining of what's happening in the Ministry of Education, several people have come out to ask the question, well, do we need streamlining also in the workforce in Kenya? Do we need, you know, a Matiang'i to show up and say, you know, this is what I need, you know, somebody entering the workforce to be able to accomplish and sort of, you know, get rid of any of the weak areas that exist in the Kenyan workforce?
Well, I wouldn't say that we would have to have Matiang'i to come into the workplace to do so, but I think using it in a different way, we use several other Matiang'is in this country to be able to start checking out on quality assurance. I'll say what we are doing at the Institute of Human Resource Management, for instance. We launched a curriculum a few months ago to prepare anybody practicing HR to become a certified HR professional. So that person would have a title CHRP, Dorcas Wainaina, for instance. What does that mean? This curriculum is not going to address the concerns of those who are freshly coming out of school into the workplace. It's going to address those of us who have been practicing HR as well. I must tell you, even for me, there are levels in that curriculum. There are certain areas I will have to go to class and learn. Then I become CHRP, Dorcas Wainaina. For example, HR accounting. And generally you hear people talk about HR and math. You know, HR people and math. You know, this is something they like. But that's not the point. You're managing a workforce. You must understand certain metrics which require calculation of some sort. And so we actually even have a unit in this curriculum of HR accounting. So everybody will have to go to class and study those areas they are not comfortable with yet, or they have not accomplished in yet. So at the moment, what the HR examinations board is doing is vetting all of us. We are being vetted. You have to apply. You are vetted. What qualifications do you have, Dorcas, with all these titles you talked about? A, B, C, D. But Dorcas, you lack HR accounting. You'll have to go to class. That's what we are doing. We are retraining. We are actually revamping the knowledge of the HR professionals through that curriculum. And so they are working, isn't it? You are a director somewhere, a vice president of HR, but in the vetting, we might realize you do not have capability in terms of leadership and governance. So you'll have to go to school for that particular one. There are some who will have to go through all the levels 1, 2, 3, but there are some who would have to take just certain units. Because if we say that they don't have the skill and everybody has to go back to school, that's not the point. The point is everybody has a certain level, but there are certain elements missing in that chain of the board of knowledge that we are going to revamp and build the capacity. So that's what we are doing at IHRM in terms of HR. And perhaps is what we can do with everybody. The other day, there was a discussion about, so then the past graduates who had the A's that perhaps were not genuine, should we recall them? And of course that's not going to happen. But can we have a way, because they're already in the workplace, can we have a way to rebuild the capacities they have?
So, you know, as someone who's worked in all of these various countries that you've mentioned, do you, I mean, when this discussion came up of the Kenyan workforce and perhaps there's a competency issue there, do you worry about what the Kenyan workforce looks like presently? You know, having the background that you have, that you've worked in all these different places and you know how our education system has been previously. Do you have a concern about who is working in our, you know, various companies right now?
I must tell you, I do worry a lot, not just in terms of work. We have discussions a lot about productivity. In our country, we don't really have a measure of productivity. We don't have a formula already designed to measure productivity, but we keep talking about, oh, we must employ people. But when they are laid off because they are not performing and there's an outcry, there's a challenge. And because I've worked in some of these organizations, and I do know that we have challenges, and that is why what organizations have tried to do is to build capacity. At the moment, there's a lot of funding going into capacity building, training. Actually, even if you open the newspaper today, you would see a lot of advertisement for training. What does that tell us? That there must be reason that is happening, because we are investing in that training and employers are sending employees to those trainings. You know, supervisory skills, how do you supervise another human being? It was an assumption that you're a manager now, you're a graduate, you should be able to do that. We have county governments now. They have hired medical doctors to oversee the Minister of Health within the county setup. Being a doctor to oversee a health sector, being a doctor to oversee a human being, two completely different things. You find somebody managing a human being with precision, like it was a surgery. You can't. In the morning they are different, in the afternoon they are different, they have a mood this morning that is different, they have a baggage from them that they are dealing with, and we must give them the skill to be able to manage. So there are a lot of challenges in the workplace, because not only are we not preparing the youth to be ready for the workplace, even managers are not prepared to manage another human being in the workplace. So there are all sorts of challenges, and not just in our country, in Kenya, but in other countries in Africa, because I have been to a whole lot of them. So it's not just in our country. But I think in our country what we've done is that our people learn. They go to school, they read. Even when I failed, now there's an opportunity for parallel program. I'm going to go for it. I will get the master's, I'll get a PhD, even when I failed in high school. There are people who failed in high school, perhaps because during the exam, they were going through an emotional issue.
But they've gone on
and it affected them at that time. But the system was such that it shut you out from going to university. But then there's now an opportunity open, and then you can go to university. That is one scenario. There's another scenario. Somebody had a D+, but there's money where he comes from. And so he can go to Kampala and study for medicine and come back to practice medicine in Kenya. There's always a link between your natural capability and certain traits. And the medicine is not one to joke about as a case in point. And so there are gaps, not in totality, but they must be addressed as they are.
From the standpoint of a job seeker, this entire conversation has raised a lot of anxiety for people who are now looking for jobs, because they're feeling like an employer is now going to look at me like I'm not, you know, I'm not competent, I'm not capable because I've gone through the Kenyan, you know, education system. And there's a lot of young people who are sort of worried about that bias. What do you think some of the effects will be for someone seeking a job at this point?
They are rightly placed to feel that way, indeed. Just somebody, you would come in and they scored A, and they're like, is it a Matiang'i A? In fact, there has been a joke going around, is it a Matiang'i A?
Or a
A
legitimate A.
Legitimate A, you know. The point being, now the employers must shift their way of thinking when it comes to talent selection into the workplace. That qualification is not just about the only thing that we need in the workplace. Let me tell you, we don't even use that A in the workplace. Nobody actually references that. Not even your university upper second class or first class. but it's about now capability. Can we turn around the selection methodologies, you know, and make them more competence-based as opposed to a qualification?
Papers.
The papers. And you know what we are good at in our country, I must say, is the papers.
Yeah.
You have the papers that have a PhD. You would have a PhD, but you don't deliver at a certain lower level. We must shift the selection methodologies now. We must rethink what the focus should be, and the focus must shift from qualification, knowing what we know today, if at all is true, given what we have seen in just the past month after the KCSE came out. I think that's how, for me, I would want to look at it. People have more capabilities than just that qualification that defines them. It shouldn't be the only thing to define the workforce going forward in terms of capability to produce in the workplace. Agreed.
Well, we are running short on time, so we do have to wrap this conversation up, but I know we could have gone on for much longer. Your final comments, just in talking about the changes we're going through as Kenya right now as a society in education and the job market. Final comments.
We need a lot more of public-private partnerships in ensuring that we prepare the youth into the workplace, into employment. Open doors as employers to give the young graduates opportunities to intern in the workplace. Number one. Number two, qualification should not be the focus. In any case, there are other organizations already, like in the UK, and Ernst & Young, if I'm specific enough, that have already stopped looking at the degree you got and the qualification you have, and they're focusing on what do you bring to the table. What capability do you have? Do you have leadership skills, or do you have the potential to lead? Do you have a potential to manage other people? Do you have potential to deliver within certain timelines, so that we focus on other skills and not the A that may have defined you, and perhaps it was not a Matiang A, but there are other capabilities that we can use to do that. When it comes to like HR and what the Institute of Human Resource Management is doing by designing a curriculum that is meant to develop the capacity of all the HR professionals, regardless of the years of experience, so that we can panel beat and make sure everybody is operating within the body of knowledge of HR professional, I think is something that needs to be emulated, so that we focus on capacity building as opposed to saying what went wrong, how can we deal with it? Okay, we are faced with it. How can we sort it out now going forward? Yes, because it's about looking forward, not looking back. We keep looking back, then we never move forward. That's how I look at it, really.
Well, thank you so much for that conversation. Dorcas Wainaina, Council Member of IHRM. We hope we can have you back again on HR-related issues, because you're quite knowledgeable, and I enjoyed speaking with you this morning.
Thank you so much. I was happy to be here.
Okay, so thank you so much for watching Power Breakfast. Of course, we always appreciate you keeping us company in the mornings, and we will be back tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. with more. We will see you then. Keep it Citizen TV.